Okay. Welcome, everyone. Great to see everyone coming in. Hi, Jen. I miss you. Hey, Meredith. Monica, great to see you again. Hi, Priya. Hi, Scene. Sophia. So many familiar names. Alana. Ashley. I just love you hardcore people who are here every week. I really appreciate it. Welcome, welcome. Hi, Lily, Lori, Liz. Hi, Marlena. Amazing. It's great to see everyone. I'm so excited for today. Today is actually one of our most popular talks we've had. We have over 250 people registered for today, so I'm so excited. I want to welcome you back to the NUSHU Thought Leader Series. I'm your host, Vanessa Cornell. We took a short break, took some time to regroup, and we are as excited as ever about our upcoming talks. I'm so excited about today, but also in 2 weeks, we have Dr. Shafali, who is going to talk to us about how to transform this moment of anxiety into resilience. And then following that, Rob Bell is going to discuss his book, Everything is Spiritual with Me. These talks are free to anyone who attends, and you can register for them through our Instagram link in bio or on our website, nushu.com. The Instagram is @NUSHU, N-U-S-H-U. In addition to the Thought Leader Series, we are offering a number of NUSHU groups as well as community lives, which are also found on the Instagram links or our website. If you want to make sure that you don't miss anything that we offer, please register for our newsletter on nushu.com. And I think that Harper is going to put those links in the chat for everyone. Thank you for letting us know where you're joining from. Hi, Barb from Tucson, Rashmi from India. It was exciting to have people from different countries here. Hi, Jen from New York, Monica from New York. Lisa from Belfast, Northern Ireland. Maricel from the Philippines. Cindy from San Diego. Hi, Ashley from New York. Scene from Connecticut. Michelle from Denver. Charity from Minnesota. It's so exciting to have people from so many different places joining. Amy from Maine. Danica from Houston. Lucy from Cornwall, UK. Nicole from Vermont. I have to say, this never gets old, seeing where everyone is joining from. Thank you for being with us today. So today, I am absolutely thrilled to welcome Xavier Dagba to the Thought Leader Series. Xavier is a transformational coach, speaker, and blogger. He says, I feel alive the most when I help people with shedding their limitations, claiming their power, and living a life of purpose. In a sea of Instagram accounts that all sound exactly the same, Xavier's really stands out. It has such surprising and thought-provoking messages. I stop and read every single one, and many of them are not what you think and really make you think. So I encourage you to check that out if you're not already following him. Xavier is my coach, and I feel like by now a friend. He is one of the most extraordinary people I have had the privilege to get to know in the past 6 months. Welcome, Xavier. Thank you for being here.
I just want to receive that for a second. And I want to say thank you for having me here and for being a part of this movement that you are leading so beautifully. And thank you to everybody that is here. It's an absolute pleasure to be here to talk about what I do, to talk about shadow work. And I am excited to see how, and where this conversation is going to go. So thank you again. It's an absolute pleasure.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I wanted to open with a little story about when we had our introductory call and what happened to me right afterwards. So I had my introductory call with Xavier. I didn't know much about shadow work. I really think I was led to him. It was so purely instinctual. and gut-based. It wasn't very rational. I just sort of knew. We had our introductory call and I said, yes, I'm ready. I'm ready to do this. I'm in. And then right afterwards, I had this moment of panic. It was this moment of sort of sheer terror. And I've always, I felt it in my body. And I've learned over time to listen to those messages. And I stopped and I thought, this is one of two things. This is my intuition telling me, no, I don't trust this guy. There's something wrong here, because it was strong. Or it's something inside of me that knows I'm about to touch a really tender place. And I'm afraid, but that fear means I'm on the edge of something and I should lean into it. And I sat with it for a while to try and figure out which one it was. And I concluded, I trust him. And it is fear, but it's fear that I need to walk towards rather than walk away from. And maybe that was my first introduction to what this shadow work is, moving towards something rather than what we've always sort of been taught or think we should do, which is move away from it. So I wonder if you could just start by just introducing the work, because I'm sure there are some people who are listening who are familiar with it, but maybe others who aren't, who've heard of it, but don't really know what it's about. And so if you could just tell us a little bit about what it is, and how you could start to understand what the work is.
Yes. And I just want to begin by acknowledging that decision, the yes that you said, because if you hadn't said yes to this work at that moment, this wouldn't be happening. So I just want to honor that. I just want to honor the bravery of noticing the fear and deciding to question it instead of running away from it. You could have just said, okay, and forgive my French, guys, fuck this guy. I don't know what he's about, but no. And then you were like, okay, I want to explore and tune in. And, from my own experience, shadow work happened to me. I always say it happened to me as a survival thing. I needed to do shadow work. I needed to face my own demons because I was already at a place where I had no other choice. And I tried the other way of just like denying and focusing on the best that I could potentially focus on and ignore this charge here for a long time. And it didn't work for me. So I had to be, okay, what is this? What is going on within me? I was the archetype, like the perfect example of the guy who was disconnected from his emotions. And I had to just like go within and to welcome them again. And this is how my own journey started. I want to say around 5 years ago, or even 6 years ago. And I didn't get it yet. I didn't even know I was doing shadow work. I was just there processing whatever I could process. And then I, of course, dove into the literature about shadow work. And there is something that happens when we grow up, and I invite you to picture yourself in your household, in your family when you grew up. You do something, mom or dad says yes. And you do some other things and they say, none of that here. And that natural expression of you, whatever it was, you make the decision that is pretty unconscious at that time to disown it. And then you begin to create a shadow. And this is something that we do unconsciously when we are young. This is what is accepted in my community, in my circle, by my family. This is what is expected of me. And I'm going to do my best to give that to them because I am still a young child. I cannot provide for myself. I cannot create safety for myself. I rely on them. So everything else that they say no to, or that I'm punished for, I am going to disown. So we begin unconsciously to create a shadow. Now, shadow work is all about claiming again these parts of us that we had disowned for the longest time. and creating wholeness within ourselves again. And this is all what shadow work is, to make it simple, to make it very basic, and we can explore even more, give even more context, give even more definition. But shadow work is just beginning the journey of diving into the place within your own psyche, within your own consciousness that you had disowned, and you're really feeling even more whole again.
So I wanted to share a couple of experiences that I had,
Yeah.
just as a way to illustrate. And I've known with my rational mind for a while that one of the things that I have disowned is anger.
Yeah.
You know, there was a period of time in my life where you would say, what makes you angry? And I would say, nothing. I have no anger, because that really was a quality or a feeling or an emotion that I was told was not one of the permissible ones. And what was so fascinating in one of our sessions, and has come up multiple times, is when you move through certain exercises that we do, certain emotions come up that are not necessarily the ones you expect. And so what I'll often say to you is, well, that's not what I expected. And there's a certain sort of circumventing of the mind, right? Because the mind has its own ideas about what's happening and what's going on. And then the body will often tell a different story. And so I've been just surprised again and again and again. I think maybe part of the reason that I am sticking with this work, which is not always easy, is my curiosity, because it really shows you things that are difficult to access because of our patterns of disowning, walking away, pushing away
Yeah.
in the unconscious mind, which becomes the unconscious child mind, which becomes the unconscious adult mind.
Absolutely.
So I
And
wonder whether you could talk about that process and what you see is happening in that process when you're trying to access things. How do you go about accessing those things that the rational mind might not be able to find so easily?
yeah, this is just a beautiful question, and your experience is just powerful. The first thing that I want to say is almost all of us will live in this place of consciousness maintenance. We try to maintain some sort of, I want to say, consciousness integrity.
Mm.
And the ego creates stories to maintain that. Anger is bad. Don't go there. Or if you go there, this is what is going to happen. So you better stay here. You better stay here. Don't even ponder that. You better stay here. So we have a whole bunch of stories that are always active, always active. I can't allow myself to feel this because, or it would be destructive to think about even that because. And the because is one of the, I want to say, one of the ugliest stories that your ego can find, so that you actually surrender to, okay, I hear you, I'm going to stay here. I don't want to dive in there. I don't want to feel anger. I don't want to resent. I don't want to feel the shame. And when you say the I don't to any emotion, you keep that inside. So it doesn't leave your body. So this is how consciousness maintenance works. We create stories. Sometimes most of those stories are borrowed from people,
Mm.
from society, from parents, from people that we cherished. And we borrow these stories to stay in that space of consciousness maintenance. Now, the ego has no clue about what is really happening in the shadow because it's unconscious. And it takes a willingness to change that, to challenge the story. The way you dive in the shadow is by challenging the story
Mm.
and surrendering to the story. What if you actually felt the anger? What if you surrendered to it? What would that mean? What if you allowed yourself to feel the resentment for your husband, for your kids? What would that mean? And to just let your body, it's the mind sometimes cannot even provide the answer to that. And let your body come with the most primal response that you can possibly have access to in that moment. And this is how you begin to uncover and have as you uncover those stories, they are always enmeshed with emotions. Like, oh, if I let myself go there, this is what is gonna happen. And then what? Hmm. And just pondering the question opens the door to like, okay, then what? What would that mean? What would that mean about me? What would that mean about how I'm seen? You know, it's just how you begin to challenge the story. And this is how you begin to follow the thread and to dive into the shadow. And no one can tell you, no coach, no facilitator can tell you what is stored in your shadow. Your body will give to you what you need to work through so that you can feel even more whole. And
Yeah.
sometimes, just like you said, is not what we expected.
And I have to acknowledge your capacity to hold people, me and my experience, in a place of deep resistance, even for those who want to go bravely to that place,
Yeah.
because there is just so much built-in resistance. And it does take a feeling of real safety and love and
Yeah.
compassion
Yeah.
to allow yourself to go there. I mean, there are some questions you've asked me where I've thought, maybe we could do a different question this time. not my that's not my favorite question. You know, can I take a pass on that one? And then
Yeah.
we go there, and then we go farther, and we go farther, and we go farther. So I want to acknowledge your capacity to hold
Thank
that.
you.
And one thing that you said to me at one point was, we cannot lead others where we have not been ourselves.
Yeah.
And so I would love to, because this is my chance, right? In our sessions, we're always talking about me.
Yeah.
Here's my chance to ask you about you
Yeah.
and your process. You're very open about where you are, the things that come up, your ongoing process. But I
Yes.
wanted to ask you, you know, more about your experience and where you were and where what you passed through, where you are now, and if
Yeah.
you would like to share what your sort of ongoing work is personally.
Absolutely. All right. So I used to be um, a PhD student, not in psychology, but in economics.
Hmm.
And I actually, I've been living in Canada for so many years, for 7 years now. But the University of Montreal is the one that offered me a full paid scholarship to come to the university to do research. And to me, it was a full yes. That's what I wanted to do at the time. You know, my family was so excited; they didn't even have to pay a penny for all of that.
Hmm.
You know, so it was just that golden opportunity. Now, before that, I already had a few wake-up calls, but school was my go-to. Just need to go to school, get the best degree that I can possibly get. And to me, getting that best degree, it was just a PhD. I'm gonna get a PhD and then do be the good boy. The story of being the good boy to my parents was really active within me because I come from a family of six, and we grew up from in a place where money wasn't always, you know, abundant the way we wanted to. And it was really important to just do something with your life. So I bought into that story. We all did. My six siblings, we are really into that. You know, many of them engineers. And at that time, 2 years into the PhD, it was in 2013, I had that dark night of the ego again, you know, and I had that feeling that this is not it.
Hmm.
This is not it. And seeing myself, projecting myself into a life of research for something that is not even going to be used to change lives. And that was my perspective at the moment. Something else was calling me. So I drop out. And I don't even tell my parents at the time that I dropped out. They only found out a year after. And from somebody who, you know, grew up in Africa, had that golden opportunity to have a PhD program being paid in full by the university, and even living expenses to be paid by the university. It was like, how crazy can that be to just let it all go? Not because it was hard, not because of grades, but just because my soul was just like calling me in a way that felt so hard. I'll remember I would get out of my apartment at the time and walk at midnight in Montreal, like not knowing what I was looking for. Like something was telling me, get out of there. And I didn't get at that time that the get out was get out of the PhD. And I surrendered. After my parents found out, we went through 2 years and a half of not talking to each other, not for birthday, not even my brothers, and everybody felt betrayed because I was also that example. They were looking up to me. Like, this is our brother. He went abroad for this PhD program, full paid. And it was just that beautiful story that I chose to disown. And at that time began a big time of searching, diving into any personal development book that I could find. And, you know, my initial teachers, Wayne Dyer, Louise Hay, and all that beautiful teaching, it became my spiritual foundation. But there was all of that grief, all of that pain after receiving disowning messages from my parents, like, you know, you are not our son anymore for choosing to do this thing or living this thing. So there was just a huge grief, anger, rage even, that was just there and expressed. And I was in this town where I was alone, and it didn't feel like I could go back home because I felt disowned. So that time was just a time of trying to feel to feel at home within myself again, and deep searching. And at some point I was very close to giving up completely on life, you know, and to just, okay, let's just end this let's just end this thing right there. What's the point? And if you remember, I always bring you to that place of what is the point? That moment was, to me, a lot of people call it the dark night of the soul, but I would call it the dark night of the ego, because that consciousness maintenance place just crumbled. I couldn't stay there anymore. I had to do something. I tried to run away from it. I went to a place in my life where I was even homeless. And at some point, I remember sitting down. It was almost fall, and I didn't have an apartment. And I just sat down and I looked up in the sky. I was just like, all right, whoever is up there or whoever is in here, just let me get out of here. And I will dedicate my voice to this work, whatever it is. I don't even have any clue what it is, but just let me get out of there. And I will dedicate my voice to that. And in that moment, a resounding surrender to the darkness is what I felt. And to many people, it can feel like, oh, this is ugly. But there was such an amount, there was an incredible amount of peace that happened on that bench when I just surrendered, when I just said yes. And you let go of all of that, yes. And your parents disowned you for all of this, yes. And you're beating yourself up for all of that, yes. And you're feeling shame right now, yes. And you're feeling all of this right now, yes. All of that, yes. That was my moment. It was a turning point for me. And I stayed on that bench until probably 11 p.m. at night. And there was some sort of like, I want to call it a rebirth that happened in that moment, where I was able to just welcome all the stories that I was running away from. And the spaciousness just within my body, I could feel the spaciousness. It was like, I think I can make it through another day. I think I can make it through another day. And for a long time, that was it. I can make it through another day. And then I got a job and I was like, okay, I can make through another week, through another month. And I just began the journey of becoming aware of the stories. That was my own practice. Whenever I was feeling paralyzed, like, what am I feeling? What is present right now? Instead of running didn't work for me. So that's how it began. That's really how it began for me.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
For sharing that with all of us. I want to reflect on how it started.
Yeah.
Which is that there was something inside you.
Yeah.
That was screaming to claim who you are versus who others wanted you to be.
Yes.
Because I see so much suffering, and I had that moment where it was an inkling, then it was like a feeling in my guts, and then it got louder and louder and louder and louder until I couldn't ignore it. So the whole period of struggle and pain and darkness was precipitated by something inside you that said, I have to be who I am, whatever I have to face.
Yes.
To be there. And I see so much suffering in people whose voice is there, but they're pushing it down, pushing it down, pushing it down.
Yeah.
And there's an inner conflict, but it's just a steady state inner conflict. And so it comes out as, I'm just sort of unsatisfied, or I'm not really sure I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And talk to me about how to cultivate that voice. If there's anyone listening who has that inkling, who has that itch, or maybe it's more than an itch, maybe someone's screaming at you. In my case, it was like, you're not listening, you're not listening, you're not listening, you're not listening, you're not listening. And then it like whacked me over the head eventually.
Yeah.
But what about cultivating that voice when it's not hammering you yet?
There is something that is just really powerful there is we all have that voice. And for some people, it's just louder than others. Some people are so much more practiced at listening, and some others are a tiny bit more trained at ignoring. And we feel like this is the way it is. Triggers are how that voice calls. Triggers are the way that voice is calling you back home. And usually when we get triggered, we think, okay, this person is attacking me. This person is saying something that doesn't sit well with me. We see it as an external coming in. We don't see the reflection that is actually happening there. And I am pretty aware that so many people on this call went thinking, maybe this is not the answer that you were expecting. Maybe you were expecting that I would give you an affirmation. And of course, there are some affirmations there that can help. Like, it is safe for me to use my voice or to just listen to my gut. You can practice that if it works for you. There is just something that is important when you begin the journey of romancing your triggers, questioning them. What am I feeling? What am I experiencing? What is this person bringing up within me that I'm invited to reconcile with? And this is how you begin to romance that voice. This is how you begin to create even more spaciousness within yourself. Triggers are how your shadows call. And inside, sometimes when we create a shadow, we also throw away the gold of purpose. And we disown that. We disown the most natural expression of who we are because it doesn't feel safe. Because maybe in childhood, it put us in, we got in trouble because of it. And whenever the trigger is here, whether it's happening through somebody that is just throwing you off or a loved one. Most times a loved one. Right now, my biggest trigger is my son because he is just raw, like this force and just like, and I'm like, what is going on in here? But those triggers, they call me home, and he helped me already so far reconcile even more with my emotional body. So triggers are how you listen more to that voice. That's what I could say for now. I don't know if it answers the question.
It does, it does. And you mentioned a reflection or a mirror. I know you talk about mirrors a lot. And I mean, as a parent, also, our children are such powerful mirrors for us. I mean, I have learned more through my children than probably in any other way. And we're highly motivated to learn so as to not pass on our patterns, our fears to them.
Yes.
Right?
This is incredibly true. And having that willingness to question, having the willingness to ask the question, having the willingness to be present. And this is the key with shadow work. Are you willing to be unconditional with yourself? Because we are trained to be conditional lovers to ourselves. I only love myself when. I invite you to ponder the question. I only love myself when. Or I don't like myself when. You know, what comes up for you? You know, to me, it used to be just like you. I hate myself when I'm angry. And you cannot expect the world to give you that unconditional love if you're not willing to be unconditional with self. Meaning, can you let your joy, your bubbliness be as valid as your pain, the anger, the shame? Can you let both be valid? Meaning, can you be present with yourself in both? Or are you trying to shut down the anger, shut down the pain, shut down the resentment? And being willing to be present, like, okay, this is what I'm experiencing, and using your breath to bring you back to that place. And can this be okay? Can it be okay that I feel this way? Can it be okay that this is my experience at the moment, without identifying to it, without creating an I am, but rather tapping into an I feel, or I experience this in this moment. This is within my field in this moment. I am the space where this is happening in this moment, and for now it is okay. We get to actually reconcile with that voice and feel all the emotions that were surrounding that part of us that was screaming through the trigger that the other person exposed. And when you're willing to do that, you feel even more whole, you know. So this is what I can say to that.
What I feel is interesting, and I would love for you to tell me if you felt this resistance, is that sometimes with people who have done a lot of work,
Yes.
people who are very interested in self-development, self-mastery, personal growth, moving toward the light, improving themselves, becoming more equanimous, right? Achieving that sort of sense of perfection where nothing bothers you, they're evolved, refined, exceptional. That desire to better yourself sometimes I think can come in direct resistance with this work. And so I would love to hear your perspective on that. And I think the shadow work has started to, people have started to sort of think about it, hear about it. It's coming a little bit more into, but the majority, I think, of the spiritual personal growth work is moving towards the light, moving towards the light, moving towards the light.
And I have to say something. Shadow work is also moving towards the light, but it's bringing the light. It's taking that light of consciousness, of awareness into the deepest level of your being. And usually people think it's just ruminating darkness. There is that perception to the ego. And it's just like we are ruminating darkness and just navigating, you know, messy feelings. Of course, that is what is happening in the action. But what you do when you are willing to be present at that depth of your being is you bring the light of radical acceptance, compassion, and also just radical honesty. Sometimes just that radical honesty with self brings the light within and creates the spaciousness. But just like you said, there is such an amount of resistance in our spiritual community when people, at least when they come my way to do shadow work. And I've worked with a lot of, you know, big spiritual teachers out there that are just, there is that huge amount of dissonance with the work. And they are thinking, if I allow myself to be present with this, I am going to attract that. And I don't want to attract that. And I hear that and I get where it comes from. And in my opinion, what I know, if you allow yourself to accept this, you are releasing the charge, where you are actually releasing the resistance and the energy that you had invested in pushing away this part of yourself. Mm-hmm. And you are actually even more equipped. You actually even have more space within yourself to create from wholeness and not from inner division. This is really what, like, there's a part of the work that is usually to get them to understand the concept itself. No, we are not ruminating darkness, meaning we are not intentionally inviting in your life worst case scenarios. We are actually opening the way for whatever is already in here to just be processed and released so that you can be even more in alignment with who you truly are. So the resistance is huge. The dissonance is huge at the moment.
Yeah. And I have experienced that release.
Yeah.
And recognize that the resistance, while it's not conscious, has a lot of energy behind it.
Oh, yes.
And that resistance actually invites it in,
yes,
rather than bringing it all out, seeing it for what it is and allowing it to be.
Yes.
Yeah, I've definitely experienced that very powerfully. We have a couple of beautiful questions in the question box that I'd love to start with. From Nami, how do you learn to love yourself again when you feel like you're not worthy of love?
That's a beautiful question.
Beautiful question.
How do you learn to love yourself again when you feel like you're not worthy of love? And who is asking? That's the first thing I want to know. Like, within her, who is asking the question? Who is thinking, I am not worthy of love? And just become aware of that. How do you learn to love yourself? Can you be present with all of it? Can you even be present with the part of you that is thinking that you're not worthy of love? And can you question that even more? Where is it coming from? What does it even mean that I'm not worthy of love? What is underneath that? And shadow work is just a question, a process of questioning. Like, what if all my life, what if I just ended up not feeling worthy of love? And this is really tender. It's a really tender place when you're willing to go there and to really question that voice. What you're going to find out is you're going to uncover even more of the stories that amplify that feeling. I'm not worthy of love because. I'm not worthy of love because. I'm not worthy of love because. And just question that even more. Is that even true? Is that true? And let all of that come online. And shadow work is really a process of acceptance. And acceptance doesn't mean the stories are true. It's just a process of like, okay, this is what is present in my field right now. And I allow myself to feel the emotions that I had stored in my body about this story. And what else? What else is in there? And to follow the thread. And what else is in there? And to follow the thread. And when you are willing to empty all of, these shadows, all of the stories that are built up around this notion, I am not worthy of love. What happens is you get into this space of stillness. You get into this place of like, they were just stories that I was telling myself. And it takes to be willing to just question them. Why? Why am I not worthy of love? What does that mean? My mom wasn't present in my life? And what does that mean? And to feel it and to question it even more, to empty all of it. And then you can step into that place of stillness where you get to choose again. Because worthiness is something that you remember, it's not something that you create, and you get to choose again to feel worthy of your own love first. And when you feel worthy of your own love first at all the different levels, then your outer world begins to reflect that to you. So all these questions, I'm going to answer them in the framework of shadow work. Meaning, I'm not going to try to bring you in a place of consciousness maintenance, which is, no, you are worthy. You were born worthy. There is that beautiful soul within yourself, but just like your body doesn't know it. And there is that dissonance when you bring all the positive reinforcement and your body doesn't know it. When you are willing to open the box, okay, what is behind this feeling of me not feeling, of this belief of me not feeling worthy? And getting in there, creating acceptance. Can this be okay? And this is usually a question that I bring people in with. Can it be okay that in this moment, you do not feel worthy of love? Can you let that be okay just for now? That this is just what you feel and this is just your experience. This is not who you are. This is your experience. Can it be okay? And if you can just surrender to that and let that be okay just for now, you see a release of resistance. Just for now, just in this moment, I don't need to battle it. So that's what I would encourage you to do, to just like get into a place of radical honesty. The love that you've been looking for is your own. And how do you demonstrate love to yourself? In my opinion, is being willing to be present with the bad as much as you're willing to be present with the pretty, the beautiful. And then even more spaciousness. Can it be okay?
Wow. Thank you for taking us all through
You're
that.
welcome.
What I'm struck by is that often when we try to find something to fix, we're trying to figure out how to move away from it.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is, no, move towards it.
Yeah.
Move more into it. Move more towards acceptance, to a place where it doesn't need to be fixed.
Yes.
Forget the idea of fixing it.
Yes.
Just accept it, surrender it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is quite a reframe and very powerful. There are so many comments coming in the chat about it.
And this is something that I just want to say here. The invitation is not to claim the I am unworthy. That's not the invitation. Because usually this is what people fear. People fear, oh no, I'm going to invite even more of that in my life. The invitation is just radical honesty. This is what I am experiencing in this moment. And for now, it's okay.
Yeah.
This is it.
So I have another question asking about shadow work and trauma work. I know you work with a lot of people who have experienced serious trauma. So if you could talk a little bit about that and your process, whether it's talking, somatic, both. I know you use a lot of different methods, but
Yeah.
just for the group to understand a little more about the process and the relationship between your work and trauma work.
There is a deep relationship between shadow work and trauma work. Because if you, how can I put this? There is a version of you that you are right now. Let's say you've been through trauma. There's a version of you that you are right now, and you have to some degree an awareness of the trauma. It is still active within you. And then there is a version of you that experienced the trauma. Usually, in order to be able to move forward, in order to be able to navigate our lives again, we make a decision after the trauma. And usually the decision is a fracture. We use shame, we use guilt, whatever harsh emotion. We create such a powerful story after a traumatic event that creates a fracture. And the fracture is a fracture in consciousness. There's a part of you that stays stuck in the loop. There's a part of you that stays stuck in a loop of like what you experienced. And that part of you doesn't know how to get out of there because you had no concept how to process what happened, how to process the traumatic event. Your brain had no concept of how to make sense of it. So we shut it down. And we have this beautiful engine here that we call body that is willing to receive everything that you're not ready yet to process. And that part of you that experienced the trauma, where does it get stored? It is in your shadow because you deny it, not because you didn't want to deal with it, but because you had no concept how to. So trauma in adult life or even late, earlier in life, there is a process of denial of that part of us. We just put it in the shadow and we begin coping. We begin coping in a way that makes us forget or makes that part of you not come alive because you are not ready. You don't know, you have no concept how to deal with it. And doing shadow work actually allows you to create what I call a reconciliation. Because every time there is that fracture, what you choose in that moment is also, I hate the word, but I'm going to say it anyways. It's self-abandonment as a consequence of the trauma. You choose to leave a part of yourself behind so that you can keep living your life and begin to cope. And it's just about bringing those two together. And all what the trauma work that we do through shadow work does, it is you being willing to become whole again with that part of you that experienced whatever traumatic thing that you experienced at that time. And this means the whole emotions, letting them move through your body again so that some sort of completion can be found. So I use so many tools, whether it's like somatic exercises, breath work, completion processes that I learned myself and others that I, also created through my experience with people. And that I think we have done one together where you just re-experience some sort of merging between who you are right now and the part of you that was stuck in the loop that you didn't have any concept to deal with back then. So that's what I can say. But that shadow work and trauma work, sometimes it's very hard to even make the separation.
Yeah. So I have so many questions and I apologize in
No
advance
worries, I love that.
if we don't get to all of them, but I do want to address two which are similar. One from Jen talks about the need for control in this moment of uncertainty and anxiety. And then there's another question that's about how do you sit with your feelings and emotions without letting them overwhelm you? There's sort of different questions, but
Yes.
it's a little bit about, you know, how do we loosen the grip?
Yes.
Because we feel like if we loosen the grip, something terrible is going to happen.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I want to ask again, who is asking? You know, like, who is asking within you? What part of you is asking? What you want to hold on to? Now, how, I'm going to answer the question, of course. How do you do that? The first part is usually when I bring people in a process, I just invite them to choose one thing. And usually the most easy thing is the breath. That is what you hold on to. And you just come back again to that breath. But there is a necessity here to practice being the observer of the experience rather than I am all, just like the experience took over me. The experience is happening within you. And when you are willing to become that part, that referee, that observer, that is just being willing to just see and hear and witness and acknowledge and feel and let it be okay and accept and just give you feedback. And you go back to that observer. The breath is the instrument of the observer, and just breathe even more deeply within yourself. Even more deeply within yourself when you welcome the emotions, when you question the stories, then it gives you some sort of like stability. Okay, I can go back to my breath. I can go back to my breath. And sometimes we forget. Society conditions us to just like hold it. We hold on to it. When you're willing to just let it flow within you and do the work and be present with the experience, I don't think I've ever seen it. Somebody just lose it.
Yeah.
But this is the story that the ego tells us. If you go in there, you might just lose it. You're going to go crazy. What if this happened? What if I lose myself? You know, and this is the story that one powerful survival archetype that we all have, that is called in shadow work, the saboteur, telling you all these stories why it's better to just stay safe, girl. Like, just stay safe, get away from all these feelings. We've made it through now, till now. Just why would you even consider go there?
Mm-hmm.
And from experience, what I can just tell you, if you are willing to be present and use your breath and come back here, what you're going to find out is that you are held. Shadow work is really something that allows you to tap into the truth of what spirituality tells us, that your spirit, your soul is always here holding you every single time. And when you are willing to empty all the stories, you get to that place where you begin to conceive of the perception of your soul, where this is just a blink of an experience. When you consider the vastness of who you are and the infinity of who you are, legit, I have people telling me, wow, like, what's the point? There is no point. Even if I screw this up, there is no point. So I may as well just go out there and use my voice and let it be loud. There is really no point. And this is what usually happens when people go in there. When you empty the shadow, you tap into the perspective of your soul. Like, be underneath all these stories, there is this place of stillness. And this is what I want to offer to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll never forget one session where we were talking about my deepest, darkest fears for my children. And we just took it one step after another. And if that happened, what would happen next? And if that happened, what would it mean? And we just kept going. And then I started laughing hysterically, right? Spontaneously, hysterically. And I thought, what is going on? I'm laughing because we took it all the way to this point of conclusion where I realized, oh, I have no control. It's totally out of my hands. It was quite a moment, and very, very powerful.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe, but we are almost at the end of our hour.
Oh my goodness.
I know.
That went fast.
There are so many questions in here, but I do want to speak to one of the questions because I
Yes.
want to share with everyone here the way that you work with people and a program that you have available. Because in the chat, I have people saying, I need this, I want this, can't wait to get started and working. So I want to make sure that we share with people the way you work with people.
Yeah.
And a question actually is, can you speak to the importance of a guide in doing this work? And so I want to invite you to tell us about your program, which is starting soon, which is a 12-week group coaching called Integrate.
Yeah.
And you're offering a very, very kind discount to people and offering it first to people on this call. Tell us a little bit about it and how people can inquire as to whether it's a good fit for them to join something like that.
Okay. Now, the process that I bring people through usually is I can just make it simple in 5 steps. And the first step is always, when it comes to shadow work, creating awareness about the stories that are alive within you, just diving in there, really. And after you create awareness, it is necessary to create acceptance. Part of it is going to be just to engineer acceptance. Can you actually welcome the stories, welcome the trauma, welcome the shadows, welcome all of that? And can you let them be okay so that you can create acceptance within yourself? And it releases the resistance. That's the second step. And then we go towards completion. Completion/integration. This is when you actually welcome the parts of you that you had disowned in the shadows, that weren't pretty. And now you welcome them back. And in a lot of that, you also end up claiming legit gold, within yourself. I have people usually telling me, oh my goodness, I just have so much more clarity about what I am here to do, what I'm supposed to do. And now it is okay for me to take imperfect action because I'm not afraid anymore. Yeah. Because that deepest fear, just like you mentioned about your children, you get to face it and accept of it. And if you create that space of acceptance within you, taking action and failing becomes safe. And if taking action and failing becomes safe, you can go all in. If taking action and be ridiculed becomes safe, then you can go all in. If taking action and have people backlashing becomes safe, then you are like, okay, spirit, let go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's do it. And this is usually what happens. Now, there's another process. Another step is just like anchoring. Okay, now I created this blank slate within myself. What energy do I want to anchor in my field? What do I want to anchor? Allowing myself to be seen in my truth, allowing myself to let that be okay, to set boundaries, and also taking imperfect action is the last step, like really putting that in motion. So we go through a process of just like creating some sort of initial vision and also diving into the shadow of that vision, because usually this is what, law of attraction, they tell us not to do. And I'm like, okay, this is nice. And it is also necessary to release the resistance here. This is the highest application of the law of attraction kind of work. And releasing the resistance is, okay, what are the stories that are going to happen if this doesn't work? Or if I do this, I fail. Then you dive in there. I call that exercise the shadow walk, and really accepting all of that. And second step, okay, we work through the duality and seeing through the duality, becoming even more one, transcending that duality. And that duality looks like trauma. That duality looks like resistance, survival patterns. It looks like um, also survival archetypes, whether you are still showing up as a pleaser, as a repressed child within yourself. You can be an adult and also very much show up as a repressed child. It's not safe for you to speak your needs, to ask for what you want, to even dare to dream. And we get to the processes of alchemizing all of that so that you can step in your power, really reclaiming that, what we call in the field feminine energy, which is an energy of acceptance. And I know I'm talking to a mother right now, and I know when you think about your kids, whenever they're in pain, you just want to love them even harder. That energy of acceptance, that energy of radical honesty, that energy of presence, and that also energy of taking the hand of the kid within and be like, I am here now. For real. I mean it. I'm here now for all of it. Not just the good, but also the bad. And now moving into the warrior energy, which is another archetype that comes to alchemize feeling like a victim, feeling like your power is outside of you, is taken away from you, and upholding that truth, upholding the new standard of self-love, and then moving into the space of trust and surrender where your intuition is welcomed even more. Just like you made the leap of saying, I choose to do this work with this guy. I don't know what is coming, but I choose to lean in. And this is leaning into that place. So the whole integrate journey, and the way I see ascension is really integration, and claiming at the same time the whole of your divinity and also your humanity at the same time. The journey of integrate is really claiming that power gain so that you can lean into your life and leading it from your heart and not from your wounds. Because the parts of you that you disown, they don't go away. They just lead the show in the background. That's what's happening. So integrate is a process of reclamation.
So beautiful. Thank you. Thank you
You're
for the
really
work
welcome.
you do in the world. Thank you for the work you've done for me. Thank you
You're
in
really
advance
welcome.
for the work you're going to do with your group in
Yeah.
Integrate, for being with us today, for sharing so much of yourself and your story and your wisdom and insight. Thank
My
you
pleasure.
all of the listeners for being with us today. And we hope to see you again for more Thought Leader Series talks. I don't know how we're going to top this one. It was incredible.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so much,
much for
everyone.
having me.
Really
My
appreciate it
absolute pleasure.
and appreciate all of you. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.